Funding for this program is provided by Annenberg CPB to advance excellent teaching.
A production of South Carolina ETV.
I look at some kids with practically straight A, maybe even school records who for some reason or other don't make it. And I keep thinking that when we say no, how will anyone understand? The kid shouldn't understand. And I won't likely have an opportunity to explain to her why this should not be taken as anything more than it is just saying, no, we've taken someone else. And I think anybody that doesn't hurt with some of these decisions doesn't belong in this business.
That man, Fred Newberger of Middlebury College, has spent 35 years deciding who gets into college. I'm John Merrow. In this edition of Learning Matters, the agony and the intricacies of college admissions.
The production and broadcast of Learning Matters have been made possible by the Lilly Endowment, Incorporated of Indianapolis, Indiana.
There are about 3,300 colleges and universities in the United States, but fewer than 100 of them are extremely competitive. That is, they turn down many more applicants than they accept. What does it take to get into one of these very competitive colleges? You're about to find out, because one of them, Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont, has agreed to open its admissions process to our cameras.
His grades do seem to be a bit middling. I was concerned about other action at the school. The recs were quite lukewarm.
So, do we want to try and make a decision on?
Let's do it.
Mark, the readers are not jumping up and down about him.
There's nothing to really build a case for him.
English is his first language, and it's really not a... I'm hearing refusal.
Yeah. Okay. We don't see a reason to take him off the waiting list.
Huh?
Yeah, I don't think
So we won't put him there.
Discussions like that one, the actual decision-making, represent the end of the process. It was almost a year ago that Middlebury Admissions Director Fred Newberger and his staff of 10 admissions officers began visiting high schools all over America. Before they were through, they spent nearly 300 nights on the road and visited more than 700 high schools, including DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, New York, which Rick Dalton and James Thompson visited last fall.
So that in addition to the numbers that I've mentioned, there are other students of color at Middlebury. Somewhere around 40% of the students, 40% of the juniors at Middlebury travel abroad in their third year. And not only just to those 5 schools, but also to places like Africa, Egypt. They go to a lot of different places to study.
Like most predominantly white liberal arts colleges, Middlebury makes a special effort to enroll qualified minority students. James Thompson finds that invariably minority students ask about money because they know that Middlebury is expensive, nearly $20,000 a year.
Some students think that's impossible, and the chances of them attending is little or nil. So what I do is, for one, explain my situation. I give my example, which is I did 4.5 years at Middlebury. It cost me $83,000. Middlebury gave me, through scholarship, $73,000.
I watched you at DeWitt Clinton. Now, Middlebury's making a concerted effort there to recruit minority students. Explain that to me. Justify why all this effort to bring minority students in.
I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's very simple. That by the year 2000, that a third of the population in this country will be black, Hispanic, or Asian. And we think it's important that this community represent what's happening in the world outside. We also believe that students from different cultures are going to give us a better educational setting.
Rick Dalton and James Thompson's efforts proved successful. 21 Clinton seniors, all blacks or Hispanics, applied to Middlebury, including Hector Caraballo and Carlos Brown. By midwinter, all the admissions officers were back on campus for the next step in the process, reading the completed applications. Every folder is read at least 3 times. How long do you spend on each folder?
I probably spend 10 minutes on an average. Sometimes I get bogged down and lose my concentration. I might spend 20. Other times when it's an outstanding student and I know we're going to admit the student and I can tell right away, I'll go right ahead, even though I'd rather stay in the folder and read it because some of what even the student writes about is interesting. I have to push on. I know we're going to take him, so I need to push on.
This looks like hard work.
It doesn't feel like very hard work, except that you have to keep your concentration there. You're doing a disservice to the students if you wander. And that's the hardest thing about it. The rest of it is interesting because every student is different and you get caught up in different, and I find myself pulling for them. You know, I'm reading through the folder and, oops, his grades are slipping a little bit. Well, let's see, maybe he's the president of the class and that'll help him. So I find myself pulling for them and you get drawn in. And then you'll see me sit and ponder about the grade. That gets hard.
How about the standardized test, the SATs or the ACT? How important to Middlebury are those test scores?
The big question. They are important. They matter here. We look at those scores. We do different things with them, but they matter because they're looked at every time, and we're going to talk about them in committee. If a student has something that we really, truly like, and we want to have that student here, and the scores aren't as high as we'd like, we might admit that student anyway, obviously. We admit quite a range of scores, and so there's a little latitude to move within that. And there are students here who have scores that are low by what our standards would be normally. But of course, we'd like to have students here who've got good grades and good scores.
Suppose I get 750 out of 800. Am I sort of guaranteed?
No. We like that, though, but you're not guaranteed. If you come across as a real drip, we might not admit you, although it's hard to turn down a 750. You've done it. No, we'd like you to still be a person behind the scores. To be very honest with you, it isn't something that we request, but in fact, occasionally when we do get recommendations from parents, it has an emotional impact on us sometimes.
Along with the pressure of reading come additional pressures, phone calls from anxious alumni parents and high school guidance counselors, as well as visits from college department heads and athletic coaches like head track coach Martin Beatty, lobbying for the applicants they'd like to see at Middlebury.
The women's team is a team that's really lacking in quality right now, as well as numbers. We're somewhere around 21. These are all good quality athletes who can come in and score, I think, in those championship meets. Most of these women are pretty strong.
Oh, we appreciate
academically, that. Yeah. I didn't want to waste your time.
Okay. Well, let's start out then with Janet. Anything you'd like to say about her to start out with?
Yeah, I've had very good correspondence with Janet. She is really a Division I athlete as far as her talent. That's why she's #1 on my list.
She's reading for us right now as a probable A. She's looking very good right now.
Good. So she's an A.
We were watching you with the track coach. What was going on?
Well, basically, we were just having a discussion about applicants this year to Middlebury who would help his track program. And bottom line, we're not going to admit anybody to Middlebury who can't handle the work. And there are some students whose academic qualifications aren't as strong, but their athletic offerings would be significant. And so we really just try to sit down and deal directly with the coaches. He had sent us a list earlier, and basically we went through the list of kids that he was interested in. They were rated, and this is true with all the coaches. We send a memo to the coaches usually late January and tell them that we've started the process. If they're interested in any kids, just to send us a list, and we'll set up a meeting time with them.
It's a kind of special pleading.
Yep, it is. And from year to year, their pleas needs are different. If they're looking for a goalie, that's why in the beginning we try to get a sense of where they're at with the program and see what their needs are. Because we'll bend a little more if a student's grade point average, if they're falling out of the top fifth of the class, but if they play a position that we're really looking for, then it's sort of a meeting of the two sides.
Jennifer.
Like all selective colleges, Middlebury categorizes applicants. Athletes, artists, and minority students, for example, have an edge, as do children of Middlebury graduates.
Sons and daughters of alumni get a lot of extra attention from every school, I believe. I can verify they certainly get a lot of attention here.
In the special language of admissions, sons and daughters of graduates are called legacies. Middlebury accepts about 2 of every 3 legacies that apply, according to admissions director Newberger, who's completing his 35th year working in college admissions.
What about wealth?
Wealth.
Yeah. The applicant whose father or mother...
The new field house, or 9 more holes for the golf course, or 2 professorships.
How much of a factor is that?
The numbers are very limited. It's a factor in a few cases. Every year, every place that I know. Yeah, but always I think people in my business stop at the point where we think the kid has no real chance for success and happiness.
But though, if a parent has the potential for building the new field house, 2 professorships, that kid gets a closer look? Is that what you're saying?
Colleges have development offices the same way they have athletic departments. And it's just as our friends in the athletic department bring a few names to our attention every year, the development office bring a few names. We usually whittle those down very, very quickly. In some cases, we probably look a little more carefully where there was an identifiable history of support. There are a lot of wealthy people out there who sent a lot of kids to a lot of colleges and never endowed a professorship. When you're dealing with somebody that has a track record of substantial support, they have to be due at least as much consideration as the third string quarterback. At least I think so, and most other people do. I haven't had the president come over here with a name that I had to admit yet. Olin Robinson has been great on that score. We talk about a couple of cases every year.
Does anybody have a veto on it? The director of development, the president? Could they come and say, take this kid?
If the president came over and told me to take a kid, I would take him. I have no contract. I work at the pleasure of the president and the board. You have to believe men don't get to be college presidents without having some track record for judgment. And I would think if he felt that strongly about it, I wouldn't have any problem with it.
By the end of February, every application, 3,684 in all, has been read 3 times by Middlebury's admissions officers, and they're graded, just like high school, A, B, or C. Even 1 B- probably means you won't get into Middlebury, but just to make sure, those applications are reread another time. That process only eliminates about 800 of the candidates, which means that nearly 3,000 folders go upstairs for review and votes by the committee.
During decision week, Middlebury has 2 committees, called the Green and the Red, meeting simultaneously. Folders are stacked neatly awaiting consideration, and all the information is also stored in the computer. The committee has 4 options: yes, probably yes, waiting list, and no. Discussions usually take only 2 or 3 minutes, although this candidate's case occupied the group for nearly 10 minutes before he was finally turned down.
He might be given him the benefit of the doubt.
Bert has concerns about his writing skills. achievements question mark supposedly were taken in January. Not enough supportive information to help me overlook his verbal presentation.
He's not doing very well in physics. Honors physics is a D. American history is a B, and AP French is a C minus.
2 years, you're not going to eradicate all of that.
The one that we put on the question mark pile. See, I would
Yes.
take Alphone over him.
But we're between a wait list and a refusal, is that right?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
How many of us want refusal? Refusal.
Are you looking for reasons to accept a kid or
Accept.
to reject a kid?
No, we're looking for reasons to accept. But I suspect that when we go as long on one as we went on that one, you probably get to the time and all of a sudden you could feel it. It was going. We kind of went, well, maybe there are some reasons we ought to admit him. And we whacked that around for a while, and then you get to the thing. Well, it doesn't look as though we're going to admit him. And then somebody saying, well, what about the waiting list? And the final decision was, it would be unfair to this kid to put him on the waiting list because in our best judgment, at least as of this moment, he's never going to get off the waiting list.
So we tried for this particular candidate, but the readers' grades were B minus, C, and B minus, and those are not strong grades. So
The ratings are either high, low, or in the middle. And if the ratings are high or low, then those kids tend to be part of a short discussion. If they're in the middle, then we tend to spend a lot of time talking about whether the student should move this way or that way.
Okay. Okay, Jose. We have English 4. He's all A's except for a B plus in accounting. English 4, trig, physics, economics, family living, and art. The counselor says he's eager, highly motivated, intellectually curious, which is not usually the norm for highly talented football players. Jose is the type of young man who will set goals for himself and not rest until he achieves them.
He's got great scores. I mean, he's great preparation, so I don't see what...
Does he have a football?
Nope.
Yes, he does.
He's a scholar athlete. There's
He's
no
a
question.
4 plus.
Yeah, I mean,
He's doing extremely well at school.
Seems to
Great.
like Middlebury.
Terrific.
He's an easy admit.
This is the season of sleepless nights for admissions people. Sometimes, given in this situation, someone will feel especially strongly about some decision. Come boiling in here tomorrow morning and say, I walk right into the committee meeting with the folder and say, I want to look at this kid again. I think we're wrong on that. And maybe overnight John will have mustered some more persuasive arguments than he was able to muster during that lengthy discussion. And maybe tomorrow we'll do a couple of things. We may beat him into submission again, or in true democratic spirit outvote him, or we may just throw up ourselves and say, John, if you feel that strongly about it, go ahead. But that's yours for the week. I don't want to suggest that everyone gets a freebie along the way, but sometimes somebody feels, and then you begin to doubt yourself and say, well, maybe John sees something here that we don't see.
there are so many good candidates, and in the end it becomes a case of just enough spaces. And it would be terrible to say to a student, don't take it personally, we've turned you down. That's the only way they can take it, is personally. But in fact, it becomes filling so many spaces, and we turn down so many qualified, good students, that in that situation, you'd like to say, you were one of many good students who weren't qualified, and don't take it personally, but it sounds silly.
His scores are very low. Scholars program, athlete, academic profile is a concern. James, you also said a C. I said a C. He's first generation with some college attended. MSB and a BC. 3 C's and 2 D's this semester. So he's not doing the work. Okay? Yep.
We're just doing the best job we can do with information that changes constantly. We're doing the best job that we can do. And that's all I promise anybody, is that we sit around conscientiously and do the best we can with strange kinds of information. Hundreds of thousands, probably, of high school grades handed out by teachers we can never know. Thousands and thousands of B's. In some cases, it means talent and effort for dictator of a teacher. In other cases, it means smile on a shiny red apple or whatever. You can't describe this. I think young, very young admissions people, and I forgive them for this, tend to describe this process in kind of scientific terms, though we were neurosurgeons making these, sorting out these gossamer-like nerves to have everything in the right spot. Hell, we're just ordinary people trying to do the best job we can.
Ordinary people, perhaps. But admissions work is extraordinarily intense, and committee members can get on each other's nerves or start keeping score. You know, hey, you voted against somebody I wanted to accept, so I'm going to get even and vote against somebody you like. If that happened, the applicants would suffer, and so Middlebury shakes up the committees every morning.
There we have our committee.
Every day you come in and you pick a
This is
dice.
the way you make up the committee.
And you say, oh, I'm in the
Everybody
green
thinks-
room, I'm up here, or I'm in the red room, I'm downstairs.
Okay.
There you
26447. We go to Nevada
Ooh, little Jeffy.
or North Virginia, whatever. Dayton Junior Senior High School. We are valedictorian, and we're going to use a 25 ACT.
She's got a lot of leadership.
Looking good.
Okay. Fine.
Straight A's from Nevada.
A's and
Short
B's.
essay, but lots of leadership.
There, John,
Okay.
put that in there.
Oh, dear.
Okay, 14360.
The midterms there. Yeah.
We're going to Fort Worth, Texas, public high school. We're valedictorian out of 262, 630, 740, 57 physics, 610, Spanish 650. Thinks she wants to be a Spanish major.
If you're a candidate, is it better to have your folder come up in the morning when you all are fresh?
Well, we run two different committees, and one committee will start at the beginning of the alphabet, and the other will start at the end of the alphabet. So hopefully it all balances out in the final analysis.
We really try to be consistent, and there are times when we'll say, we've got to stop. We need a new or a fresh perspective, or we may say, okay, was that the right decision, and call a halt. So that we do try to be consistent.
And there are times when you come in the next day, having thought about a decision overnight, and bring a file back to the table saying, I'm not comfortable with this, let's talk about this again. South Catholic High School in Hartford, Connecticut. We're looking at 6 out of 123 with a 490, 520, 510, 560, 500. This is a first generation kid.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
Both folks are right from Italy. Dad is retired. And Mom is a waitress, so we have also a blue collar probably here.
Well, do you know?
Extracurricular activities are not too extensive. She is active in a literary magazine and theater company, but not much else. However, it should be noted that she holds an after-school job, which takes up most of her free time.
She's got 2 older siblings.
I'd like to wait list her. She's got a good rank.
She's taking 2 senior APs.
Is she somebody we'd take off the waiting list?
Yeah,
Okay. Then let's put her there for
What's
now.
cost?
I think that's the case that everybody wants to take her, but she hasn't helped with the numbers.
Let's go to 15,738.
You all seemed intrigued by one candidate because she was a blue collar.
Sure, we don't see many kids from that kind of background. And I think part of our job, the big part of our job actually, is to create an interesting community, people from lots of different kinds of backgrounds. And if we can indeed find somebody from a different kind of background, bringing different kinds of perspectives or values to the campus, then I think that's a terrific opportunity for us to flesh out the balance here a little bit.
So you're trying to make Middlebury's composition varied. Is
Sure.
that part of your job?
That's a big part of our job.
They talk. Colleges for the last 4 or 5 years, all colleges that I know, talk endlessly about diversity, and it's usually in the context of minority representatives. But there is enormous kinds of diversity. Kids whose fathers are plumbers, and not, if you go to the high-powered high-powered academic schools, anyway, you find an awful lot of kids whose fathers are orthopedic surgeons or stockbrokers or that sort of thing. So all of a sudden the kids whose fathers get their fingers dirty at work begin to look something special. And they it's a diminishing segment of the United States. And I think they begin to stand out. Kids who work a lot, you notice, picked up on that.
You also seemed intrigued by a kid from Nevada. The geography plays a part.
Sure.
Everybody nods.
Yep.
I think one of the most common misperceptions about the business is that our job is to admit people who deserve to be admitted based on their performances in and out of the classroom. And ultimately, I think really what we're doing, though, is serving our own self-interest in creating the balance and diversity and creating an interesting community in the final analysis. And unfortunately, you won't be able to admit everyone who deserves to be admitted.
So Middlebury, like every other selective college, acts in its own self-interest. It accepts the kind of students it decides it wants and needs. But what does that mean for a high school student who wants to attend Middlebury or some other selective college? What should he or she do?
Don't go home and watch General Hospital every afternoon. I mean, that's the first bit of advice.
And you need to feel passionately about something and then convey that to us. If that's the team that you've been playing for, or that's the environmental club that you've been working for 4 years, that helps. Feeling strongly about something and then conveying that is good.
It doesn't necessarily have to be at the high school. It could be community service, which we're seeing a lot more of this year, which is nice.
I think just do the best job you can. And one of the surprising things, frequently people ask people in my position, are grades really important? You know, that staggers us, and yet we get it all the time. I think the vocabulary of admissions has begun to encompass so many things, you know, profiles of leadership and this and that people forget that what we are, our fundamental purpose is we're an academic institution. So academic work is the heavyweight, that your school record is the heavyweight in the process. Everything else is kind of like a light shining on it.
Early in April, the mail went out. Letters of acceptance to 711 women and 612 men. The rest, 2,471 applicants, were either rejected outright or put on the waiting list. 80 legacies applied, 52 were admitted. That's a 65% admission rate. 220 blacks and Hispanics applied. 135 were admitted, a 61% admissions rate. 21 seniors from DeWitt Clinton High School applied. 12 were admitted, a 57% admissions rate. In an earlier edition of Learning Matters, we reported on college admissions from the viewpoint of these 5 seniors at DeWitt Clinton, and we promised an update. Here it is. Gabriel Rueda was accepted at all 5 colleges he applied to. He's chosen to go to Cornell. Denise Rice was accepted at the 4 colleges she applied to, including Amherst and Cornell. Like Gabe Rueda, she's chosen Cornell. From the beginning, Karen Holness had her sights set on Notre Dame, and that's where she's going to be in the fall. Hector Carabaya was accepted by 5 colleges, including Wesleyan, Colgate, Amherst, and Middlebury. He's chosen Amherst. Carlos Brown applied to 6 colleges and was accepted by all 6. He's decided to attend Middlebury. 4 of the 5 students qualified for financial aid and have been awarded generous packages of grants and loans, as much as $21,000 a year. As everybody knows, many students are accepted by more than one college. Eventually, they have to choose. They get to write letters of acceptance and rejection. In the past, 38% of the students accepted by Middlebury have said yes. In the special lingo of college admissions, that's known as the yield. This year, Middlebury is on target for a yield of 38%. Among the 545 students who've said yes are 30 legacies, 22 black and Hispanic students, and 3 students, including Carlos Brown, from DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx. Are you having a good year, I asked? The answer? We don't know yet. We won't know for 4 years until we see how many actually graduate. For Learning Matters, I'm John Merrow. Thanks for being with us.
To find out more about this program, visit us at PBS Online at the internet address on your screen.